So just a quick question to begin this morning. How you doing on your New Year's resolutions? We're at day 5. Are they over already? Are you still sticking to them? Sometimes it can be even hard just for like 4 or 5 days to stick with a resolution. But I actually wanted to tell you about a New Year's resolution that has actually stuck for an entire year. It's still in effect today. So about this time last year, my wife, Linnell, decided that she wanted to do a better job connecting to our neighbors. You see, we live on a corner lot, and around that corner, the 5 or 6 houses there, they're all terrific people, and we all have lived there for more than a decade. So we've known all of these people for a long time. But what's sort of happened, as our kids have grown up, we've sort of lost the natural connections that we used to have through school or other events. Like, for instance, as our kids were growing up, one of the things we used to do was every Halloween, we'd invite everyone to come to our driveway, and we would set up chairs, and the ladies would sit in the chairs and sometimes drink wine. They would hand out the candy while the dads then took the kids around the neighborhood. It was just one of those events throughout the year where we got a chance to just hang out together and connect. But these sort of things have gone by the wayside a bit over the years. So my wife made this New Year's resolution, and she shared this with our neighbors. And the resolution was something she called the 31 Club. And here's what that means. The idea was that in the months with 31 days, one household in the neighborhood would hold an informal gathering at their particular house. The idea was to make it as easy as possible on the host. They could choose exactly which day within the month, what time, the day of the week. It could be completely, totally informal if they want. The whole idea was simply to have a time where folks could get together and just hang out. So we hosted it last January, and everyone loved it. And then the next time there was 31 days, some other folks hosted it, and then it just took off. Now everyone loves it. In fact, we were at a party the other day, and someone said, we are going to keep the Club 31 going this year, aren't we? So everyone loves it. And my guess is that Linnell tapped into something that we were all missing and craving, this sense of relationship, of connection with each other that we had lost. We liked that community. We wanted it again. And so that's one resolution that has actually worked. But if you think about sort of resolutions in general, I think that there's sort of a curious thing at play. So these changes that we want to make in our lives, be it removing something like losing weight or reducing stress or adding something to our lives, like learning a new skill or spending more time with our family, something like that. Whatever improvement we desire to make in ourselves, the thing is, we absolutely could do that at any point throughout the year. We just have to decide to do it. But there's something about the changing of the calendar, the new year, that causes us to sort of reflect upon where we are in our lives. We get this sense of, another year gone. We're all another year older. There's more water under the bridge. And time just sort of relentlessly marches on. So we take a moment to stop and reflect. Now, having said all of that about New Year's resolutions, you may be sitting there wondering, how in the world are you going to tie what you just said, Pastor Mark, to this theology that we get in John chapter 1, which we just read? And I promise I will tie this together. But here's another interesting thing about this passage that we have this morning. You may be aware that we're still in the Christmas season. Actually, today is the 12th day of Christmas. 12 drummers drumming today, right? Epiphany is tomorrow. So we're still within the Christmas season. In fact, if you're super observant and you were here on Christmas Eve, you may remember that this same section of John chapter 1, we read that on Christmas Eve. That was our Christmas Eve gospel lesson. So how in the world does this not only tie to New Year's, a brand new year, how does it tie to Christmas? Let me try to piece that together for you. And the place to start is if we look at the way the 4 Gospels we have in the Bible, the way they treat the birth story of Jesus. So we have these 4 Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. They're all written by different authors. They all tell the story of Jesus' life from very different perspectives. They're all trying to say a certain thing. And they actually all have different birth stories about Jesus, or they handle it differently. For instance, the first gospel, the Gospel of Matthew, we only have like 2 paragraphs about the birth of Jesus. It focuses on Joseph and the dream that he had. The second gospel, the Gospel of Mark, there's actually no birth story. The Gospel of Mark begins with the baptism of Jesus. He's an adult. And then the Gospel of Luke, the third gospel, that's the more traditional story that we typically read on Christmas Eve. That has the story of Mary being visited by the angel. It has the story of the census, the journey to Bethlehem, laying Jesus in the manger, the story of the shepherds. And then we have John, much different from the first 3 that I've just mentioned. So what we have in John today is many times called a prologue to what happens in the Gospel of John. And it's almost like the author, John, is saying, you know what? The human birth of Jesus, that's all well and good. It's important. I'm not going to focus on that. I actually want to go back, way, way back to the beginning. You see, it's no accident. John begins his gospel by repeating what's at the start of Genesis. Did you hear those 3 words? In the beginning. It continues from there. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So John is saying that Christ was a part of God from the very start and was the creative spark of life itself. The passage continues like this. All things came into being through him, meaning through Christ. And without him, not one thing came into being. What has come into being in him was life. And the life was the light of all people. And then there's a passage that we often say at Christmas. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not overcome it. So that's typically how we tie this to Christmas. In that this light of creation, which was there from the very beginning, it came directly into our human world. This light became flesh and lived among us. So at Christmas we thank and honor God for bringing that light into the world. That through that baby in a manger, we will never have to walk in darkness again. We always have that light available to guide us. So if that's Christmas, what about New Year's? Well, as I said earlier, we have this idea around the turning of the year of time marching on. And maybe even more so this year, because we're closing out an entire decade. But the Word, the light that dwelled among us, transcends all of time. He was there at the creation, and he will be there when everything is complete. He was, is, and always will be. Or as it says in the book of Revelation, he is the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last, the beginning and the end. And I hope you can see that for the good news that it is. Because while we may fret over the passing of another year or worry how we can improve our lives, there is a constancy to God's presence in our universe and in our lives. God was there before we were born. God will be there after we die. And God is absolutely there for you right now. And one of the beautiful things about God's constantly present, never-ending love for us is that God requires absolutely nothing of us to receive it. We don't have to make resolutions and then keep them. We don't need to add or remove things from our lives. We simply accept the gift that is offered to us. That's what the scripture says. Here's Here's how it describes that. To all who received him, who believed in his name, he gave the power to become children of God. From his fullness, we have all received grace upon grace. So here's some more good news for you this morning. You actually don't have to lose that weight. Keep it. You don't have to learn a new hobby or a new language. You don't even have to stop being a smart aleck. You don't even have to reduce your stress. I mean, all of those are really, really good things, and you probably ought to do all of those things, but none of them will earn you any favor with God. Instead, our passage says, simply receive him. Receive him into your heart and believe in his name. Believe that God's love can make all the difference in your life. And then there's that magnificent phrase at the end of the passage I just read, that we have all received grace upon grace. That means it's an ongoing process, a process where God continues always to forgive us, always to love us, to offer us this grace. And so we don't need those New Year's resolutions to get this grace. But I think it's interesting if we were to stop and think about that word resolution for a moment. Because what if we were to break it into two parts? We would then have re-solution. Re meaning again, like in repeat or rework, and then solution. With this babe in the wooden manger who died on a wooden cross, we have been given the world's most important solution. It's a solution that says, even when we turn away from God again and again, even though we want to please God and we still fall short, the solution is that Christ's death and resurrection reconciles us back to God. It's a solution that's available to us again and again and again, a re-solution over and over and over as many times as we need it. Grace upon grace, upon grace, upon grace. You see, God offers this grace upon grace because he desires to have a relationship with us. He desires an ongoing connection with us, both now and for all eternity. And it's that idea of relationship is what really motivated Linnell with that Club 31 concept. But out of those relationships, something else happened throughout the past year and more recently, and I want to share that a little bit with you. So several weeks ago, I don't know if you heard about this or not, I had a little heart incident. I had a heart attack, for you visitors that haven't been here. And these Club 31 neighbors, well, they all rallied around me and Linnell in a really powerful way. So on that morning of the heart attack, which started at 6 o'clock, by 6:10, one of my neighbors was already walking in the door while the paramedics were in the house. That neighbor started to take care of Linnell. And then when I was whisked away to the hospital, that same neighbor demanded to take Linnell to the hospital. So she took her there and stayed with her the entire time. And then that same day, while I was laying in the hospital and recuperating, well, I have a big tree in my yard, and just a couple of days before all this happened, the tree dropped all of its leaves. So my entire lawn was covered with leaves. Well, several of my neighbors decided they wanted to clean my lawn. So while I was in the hospital, they all got there and entirely cleaned the leaves out of my yard. In fact, one gentleman, I think, has done this 3 more times since this all happened. I'll have leaves in my yard, and then all of a sudden I'll look, oh, and they're gone, because he's decided to clean them again. They visited me in the hospital. They provided food for us. They've given us all kinds of other help as well. The support has really been incredible from them. And so my read of this is that the Club 31 gatherings throughout the year solidified our relationships and our affection for each other, such that it was sort of a natural response for them to jump in any way that they could to help. In fact, Linnell and I would do the same for any of them if they are in trouble. And so while I am very grateful for all the ways they helped, I am even more grateful for the authentic connection we have with each other. And then the blessings we can bestow upon each other because we have that relationship. It's exactly the same with God and you. God desires an authentic connection, a deep relationship with you. And out of that relationship comes blessings and gifts, both when things go unexpectedly wrong for us and when things are going normal. Whatever comes your way, what's ever going on in your life, God is there throughout because he is the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. God remains in relationship with you throughout. So in this brand new year, I wish you the best with your New Year's resolutions, whatever they might be. I hope you are able to lose weight or relax more or to quit smoking or to spend more time with your family. However you are seeking to improve yourself, I support that and I hope it works for you. But even more than that, I pray that you embrace the re-solution that God offers you. This connection, this deep relationship that God extends to you. This re-solution is available to you today and every day of the coming year, all throughout 2020 and beyond. It's available to you again and again and again. So grasp this grace. Grab hold of it. Live into it so that in this new year, you may be filled with that grace upon grace, upon grace, upon grace. Amen.